Reborn back to the day my sister and I were sold. My sister pushed me toward the cold-blooded, murderous young general. My sister is beautiful and obedient. She will surely serve the general well. In our previous life, my sister, captivated by the general's handsome looks, pushed me toward the poor scholar instead. Later, that scholar topped the imperial exams, rose rapidly through the ranks, and became the Grand Chancellor, while my sister was tortured to death by the gloomy young general. So, in this life, she wants to choose again. But what she doesn't know is that I was born with a destiny of wealth and honor. No matter who I marry, that person will rise rapidly to success. What she also doesn't know is that I've been waiting for this day for a very long time. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins, when my sister, with tears streaming down her face, begged the young general to buy me. I knew she had been reborn too. 3 months ago, our father committed a grave crime, causing the entire Shen family to be implicated. All the men in the household were sentenced to military exile, while the women were registered as low-status individuals and sold into slavery. Since my sister and I were unmarried, we were sent to the Jiaofangxi to serve as courtesans. Today is the day we are put on display. If someone is willing to buy us, it would mean saving us from this sea of suffering. In my previous life, on this very day, the young general originally chose me, but my sister pushed me off the platform, breaking my leg. She got her wish and left with the young general. However, after entering the general's residence, she did not live a good life. Instead, she spent her days competing with the many women in the household. Later, the young general, frustrated and discontent, joined the third prince in a rebellion. When the rebellion failed, he died under a hail of arrows as a disgraced official, and my sister was once again sent back to the Jiaofangxi. At this time, my husband Wen Qinghe had already been appointed as the Grand Chancellor, second only to the Emperor and above all others. I had long been freed from my status and become a titled lady. My sister was so consumed by jealousy that she knocked me unconscious, took me back to our old house, and set it on fire, determined to die together with me. When I woke up again, we had returned to this very day. As the young general raised his hand and pointed toward us sisters, my sister pushed me forward, weeping and pleading, "General, my sister is beautiful and well-behaved. You will surely like her." The young general's gaze was as deep as the sea, his expression unreadable as he looked at me, then nodded. "Then it's her." Watching my sister cry so pitifully, I curved the corner of my lips. My sister hugged me with deep affection and reluctance, saying, "Little sister, you must be obedient and sensible, serve the general well. If you live well, I can rest assured." Her sacrifice was truly moving. Those listening around also showed heartfelt emotion, praising her for being such a good sister, but only I heard her whisper in my ear, "Jiyu Yanji is a rare good husband. Go and enjoy your blessings, sister." While Wen Qinghe is mine now, she was very pleased, thinking that by choosing a different life, she would surely be as glorious and honored as I was in my previous life. But she didn't know that Wen Qinghe was not the talented and capable man rumored outside, but a foolish good-for-nothing addicted to drinking and gambling. The reason he passed the imperial exams and rose steadily in his career was all because of me. In other words, no matter who I marry, that person will rise to great heights. I followed behind Jiyu Yanji as he walked with his hands behind his back, his pace neither fast nor slow. Along the way, the commoners who encountered him would nervously avoid him. As I watched, I couldn't help but feel tears welling up in my eyes. As if sensing something, Jiyu Yanji suddenly stopped and turned to look at me. I met his gaze, holding back my tears. "Jiyu Yanji, as long as I'm here in this lifetime, you will never suffer from unfulfilled ambitions, nor will you become a rebellious traitor." I followed Jiyu Yanji, and we didn't speak a word along the way. When we arrived at the residence, he instructed the housekeeper to arrange my accommodation before leaving. I wasn't in a hurry to speak with him either, so I followed the housekeeper to my quarters. Along the way, she reminded me as per the rules not to disturb the general. If I were to anger him, being punished would be the least of my worries. Losing my life wouldn't be worth it. I muttered, if he doesn't let women find him, why keep so many concubines? The general's residence was vast, and as I walked through, nearly every small courtyard housed women. Jiyu Yanji had no official wife, All these women were concubines. In my previous life, as soon as my sister entered the household, she was targeted by these women and suffered greatly, while Jiu Yenji never once stood up for her. Sure enough, as soon as I had settled in, 7 or 8 women entered the room. They looked me over as if appraising goods, and one particularly seductive woman asked, "The daughter of a disgraced third-rank official, what crime did your father commit? Embezzlement, fraud, rebellion, or deceiving the emperor?" As expected of a lady from a noble family, a woman in red stepped forward, pinching my face. "Your demeanor and looks are indeed better than ours. I wonder if your skills in pleasing men are also superior." They all laughed together, very frivolously. I finally understood why, in my past life, my sister ended up confronting every single one of them. These women formed cliques to bully newcomers. No matter who it was, they would assert dominance as soon as someone stepped through the door. I slapped the woman's hand away and said coldly, "If there's nothing else, I need to rest. I'll visit each of you another day when I have time. How dare you hit me?" The woman raised her hand and slapped me across the face. "You wretched brat, still thinking you're some noble lady." I pressed my tongue against my burning cheek. In my past life, I had a gentle and slow-to-anger temperament. Even when bullied by my sister, I would swallow my anger and endure it, never daring to cause trouble for fear of being scolded for not knowing my place. Later, when supporting Wen Qinghe in his official career, over 12 years, I had seen all sorts of monsters and demons, and was no longer the Shunrong who could be easily manipulated. I immediately stood up and slapped her back, and what followed was a chaotic brawl that even I hadn't anticipated. As the fight went on, those women rushed out with disheveled hair, standing at the door and screaming for help. I grabbed the hair of the woman who had slapped me earlier, dragged her to the courtyard gate, and threw her out. "If you dare harass me again in the future, I'll beat you every time I see you." I threw the handkerchief I used to wipe my hands onto the woman's face, and just as I was about to turn and close the door, I suddenly saw Jiu Yenji standing by the roadside. It seemed someone had reported the commotion here to him. I didn't know when he had arrived, but he was standing with his hands behind his back, watching me with an unreadable expression. My heart sank. I thought, "It's over," before I could even speak with Jiu Yenji. "I've already given him the impression of being a shrew. I wonder if he'll drive me away." I sighed. What an unfortunate start. The concubines noticed him too and swarmed toward him like a flock of bees, weeping and coquettishly complaining. "General, you must uphold justice for us." Jiu Yenji quietly watched me, his eyes exuding a cold, murderous intent. I recalled my sister's description of him. When he is silent, you fear him. If he speaks, you fear him even more. My sister said that Jiu Yenji is a ferocious beast that devours people without leaving even their bones. At first, she had even dreamed of winning Jiu Yenji's favor, but later, she dared not even entertain the thought. Whenever she saw Jiu Yenji, she wished she could take a detour to avoid him. The entire courtyard fell into a deathly silence under his gaze. Those who engage in brawls will receive 60 lashes. If they repeat the offense, they will be expelled without exception. Jiu Yenji cast a deep, unreadable glance at me before turning and walking away, his sleeves billowing. After receiving 60 lashes, I lay listlessly on the bed, flipping through a book. Truly worthy of being called the iron-faced general, he shows no mercy at all, not even to someone as delicate as Jade. I was feeling drowsy when the maid came to report that my sister had come to visit me. She was carrying 2 pounds of pastries, wearing a new dress, her face as radiant as peach blossoms. Glowing with spring, the general's mansion has many rules. You can't be as carefree as you used to be. Look at you, you've already offended so many people just after entering the mansion. You totally deserved those 60 lashes. He clearly knew what kind of person Jiu Yenji was. Yet he deliberately said such things just to provoke me. I couldn't be bothered to pay her any attention. My husband may be a bit poor, but he treats me very well, even though I ignored her. I couldn't stop her from showing off. In a few months, it will be the spring imperial examination. By then, I'll be the wife of the top scholar. Just thinking about it makes me excited. You know he'll come in third in the imperial examination even before it's taken. I raised an eyebrow and looked at her. She froze for a moment, her eyes flickering, then said, "Of course, Qinghe is well versed in both literary and military arts, filled with knowledge, not to mention third place." Even coming first as the top scholar is entirely possible. My sister spoke with full confidence, placed 2 gin of worthless pastries on the table, and swaggered off triumphantly. She really treats Wen Qinghe like a treasure. No matter, her good days are coming very soon. Recovering from my injuries was dreadfully dull. Counting the days, I finally sent my maid to inquire about my sister's affairs. She returned with the news that Wen Qinghe had bought a courtesan from a brothel and brought her home as a concubine. My sister cried and screamed, even beating the concubine. I couldn't help but laugh. This was only the beginning, and she was already losing her composure. Apart from being genuinely poor, everything Wen Qinghe presented about himself was a complete facade. After I recovered from my injuries, I went out to the street with my maid and saw my sister. She was having tea with Wen Qinghe's classmates' wives, and on her occasionally exposed wrist, I clearly saw large bruises. Wen Qinghe had hit her. In my previous life, Wen Qinghe had also laid hands on me. At first, I endured it out of fear, until I found Mr. Lu and gradually gained confidence. When Wen Qinghe tried to hit me again, I slapped him back. After a few times, Wen Qinghe no longer dared to act tough in front of me. My sister isn't really the type to take losses. But now she has to endure it for the sake of the Tanhua's wife. Miss, are you buying fabric to make clothes for the general? The maid asked me. I shook my head and said, I'm making them for myself. The maid gave me a strange look because I was buying fabric meant for men's clothing. Everyone is trying every possible way to get close to the general, but you are the most honest one, never going out, so the general doesn't even remember you anymore. I won't join in the hustle and bustle. Because I have a better way. As the new year approached, I changed into a newly made men's robe, put on a fake beard and a hat, and slipped out through the side gate of the general's residence. After buying a jug of wine and 2 cuts of meat, I stopped in front of a shabby little courtyard, knocked on the door, and a white-bearded old man appeared behind it. The old man was at least 70 or 80 years old, with a head full of white hair and deep wrinkles. But his eyes were exceptionally bright. He looked me over and asked, "Who are you looking for, master? I finally see you again." I bowed to him and said that I was my father's student. Knowing that he had returned, I came to pay my respects. I made him his favorite braised pork, and as expected, he couldn't stop praising it. I didn't dare stay too long and said I would come again tomorrow to cook for him. I came for 7 days in a row, and on the 8th day, I met someone at Mr. Lu's house. Xiao Rong, my master waved to me. This is General Gu. He came to pay me a New Year's visit. Make a few more dishes today. I'll have a drink with General Gu. Finally, I had waited for him. Carrying 3 cuts of meat and 2 bundles of vegetables, I looked at Jiu Yenji. Jiu Yenji also turned to look at me, paused for a moment, and then nodded. All right, I'll go make the meal, I said. Once the food was ready, the 3 of us each took a seat. Mr. Lu and Jiu Yenji were discussing matters at court. Mr. Lu advised Jiu Yenji, since there's nothing you can do as a general, why not simply do nothing? I've heard you keep over a dozen concubines, why not indulge in some pleasure? Jiu Yenji's current situation was quite awkward. He was originally a highly regarded minister by the emperor, but when his sister's plot to harm the prince and the imperial consorts came to light, she was confined to the cold palace. As a result, he was implicated, stripped of all his positions, and reduced to a nominal official with no real duties. In his previous life, from this moment until his death in a rebellion 10 years later, his life was constantly burdened by his sister and nephew, leaving him perpetually frustrated and unfulfilled. During these 10 years, 2 pivotal events occurred that altered his fate. By changing the course of these 2 events, I can reshape his destiny. As for other matters, I have no intention of interfering. The first incident was the spring hunt, where the 3rd prince and his majesty encountered a wild bear in the forest. The 3rd prince abandoned his majesty and fled for his life alone. Upon returning, knowing he was in the wrong and being cowardly by nature, he actually claimed that Jiu Yenji had instructed him to do so. Naturally, his majesty, who had intended to reinstate Jiu Yenji, never brought up the matter again. Sir, please have some vegetables, I interrupted the tense atmosphere, serving Jiu Yenji another portion. No chili has been added. General, please eat more. Jiu Yenji looked at me and raised an eyebrow. You know I don't eat spicy food. Everyone knows the general's taste. Here, Jiu Yenji gave me a thoughtful glance. After the meal, I offered to play chess with Jiu Yenji, and surprisingly, he didn't refuse me. Jiu Yenji was very skilled at chess, making clean and decisive moves. Since I played similarly, we became so engrossed in our fierce match that we lost track of time. By the time I came to my senses, it was already dark. Jiu Yenji bid farewell to Mr. Liu, and I eagerly asked him, "General, shall we continue tomorrow?" He looked at me with a faint, ambiguous smile. "Do you enjoy playing chess with me that much?" "Yes, playing chess with you is quite interesting." Jiu Yenji curled the corner of his mouth slightly. "I have matters to attend to tomorrow." "What's the matter? Do you need me to help you with it?" Jiu Yenji glanced at me and said quietly, "I'll come tomorrow." The next day, Jiu Yenji really did come. After the meal, I brought out the chessboard and asked him to play a game with me. I made small talk with him about this and that, and Jiu Yenji responded to my chatter intermittently. Surprisingly, the atmosphere was quite pleasant. On the 5th day of the first lunar month, when I left the general's mansion through the side gate, I was actually discovered by the concubine I had fought with earlier. She reported it to the steward, who scolded me and changed the lock on the side gate. That afternoon, I broke my promise and didn't go to Mr. Liu's place. That night, in a fit of anger, I beat up that concubine named Liu Yao. But strangely enough, the next day, the lock on the side gate was removed again. When I happily went to Mr. Liu's place, Jiu Yenji was already there. "Didn't you come yesterday?" he asked me. "Yeah, I had some matters at home." I waved the vegetables in my hand. "I bought a fish head. We'll have fish head tofu for lunch." I was busy in the kitchen when I looked up and saw Jiu Yenji leaning against the doorway with his arms crossed, quietly observing me. "Are you hungry?" "General, the food will be ready soon." I smiled, and he suddenly said, "I told Liu Yu to remove the lock." I was stunned, looking at him, dumbfounded. He was amused by my expression. "Just by sticking on a beard and wearing men's clothes, you think you're a man?" I swallowed hard, my lips trembling slightly. The general recognized me as Shenrong all along. I thought my disguise was so good. He looked at me with a teasing expression. "You overestimate yourself." It wasn't clever at all. I was about to speak when the kitchen knife in my hand slipped, instantly slicing off a piece of flesh from my finger. Blood immediately welled up. He walked over, held my hand, and frowned. "Rinse it with water first." I brought some medicine. He grabbed my hand, scooped some water to rinse the wound, and sprinkled powder on it. The medicine stung as it contracted the wound, and the pain brought tears to my eyes. He glanced at me. "Does it hurt that much?" I nodded. "It hurts as much as being whipped." I paused, looking at him. "Are you blaming me for being unfair?" I shook my head. "I wouldn't dare blame you. Whatever the general does is right." He pursed his lips. "You got into a fight, shouldn't you be punished?" I pursed my lips. "Are your injuries healed?" I nodded. "It's better. But it still hurts on cloudy or rainy days." He frowned, his expression softening a little. "Let's go." I trotted after him. Where are we going?" "We're not cooking today, so no one can accuse me of mistreating her again." He walked ahead with his hands clasped behind his back. I lowered my gaze and followed behind him. It had started snowing outside. He fetched an umbrella from somewhere, then stopped and waited for me. I didn't dare approach. He frowned, looking fierce, and said, "Come here." I obediently followed him. The street was nearly empty. He walked at a steady pace, and the snow fell on the umbrella with a soft, rustling sound, as if isolating us from the rest of the world. "I brought you back without any ulterior motives. You don't need to go out of your way to please me." After a long silence, he suddenly spoke. "Aside from becoming my concubine, you can make any other request." I lowered my head, thinking this was a great opportunity, and was just considering how to bring up the spring hunt with him when he suddenly spoke in a tense voice, somewhat displeased. "Why are you crying?" I wasn't crying. I was about to explain, but as I rolled my eyes, I actually managed to squeeze out a tear and looked at him. His brows gradually furrowed, and he sighed. "Forget it. Do as you please." "Really, I can do as I please." I laughed. "General, I'm hungry. Please treat me to a meal." He paused and glanced at me sideways, saying helplessly, "Pushing your luck." I followed behind him with a smile. "I want to eat fish head. I didn't get to have the one we bought today. But if we leave, the teacher won't have lunch." "You talk too much." He tilted the umbrella a bit more toward me. I've sent someone to prepare a meal for the teacher. I gave a thumbs up. The general is always considerate. I held back a laugh. You're quite good at flattery. As the spring hunt drew nearer, I stopped visiting the teacher and waited at home every day for Jiyu Yenji. Outside the study, I knocked several times before a voice responded from inside. Pushing the door open, I saw Jiyu Yenji looking at me, his gaze then falling on the food box I was carrying. I approached with a smile. It's the soup the general likes best. Drink it while it's hot. Jiyu Yenji propped his cheek on his hand and watched me. I handed him the bowl. Do you want me to feed you? Surprisingly, Jiyu Yenji rolled his eyes at me, took the bowl, and drank it himself. I sat across from him watching him. Even the way he drank soup was pleasing to the eye, every movement exuding an air of noble elegance. Have you looked enough? Jiyu Yenji asked me. Not yet. I shook my head, then immediately regretted it. Blushing, I looked at him. He lowered his gaze to drink tea and said calmly, I'm not a good match. You don't need to waste your thoughts on me. I nodded. Then how about this? Let me stay in your residence for 2 years. General, I'll leave after 2 years. Is that acceptable? Jiyu Yenji looked at me with confusion. Because in 2 years, the 2 major events that will affect your fate will no longer exist, and I can retire with success. I promise. I will definitely leave in 2 years and will not bother you. He frowned slightly, his tone a bit sharp. As you wish. With his assurance, I immediately felt at ease. He wouldn't drive me away before I achieved my goal. Thank you, General. I'll take my leave. This way, I wouldn't have to deliver soup every day. I just needed to remind him when the time came. However, he appeared in front of my courtyard several times. I went out to greet him and asked, General, is there something you need? He glanced at me, clasped his hands behind his back, and said, It's my own home. Can't I take a casual stroll? Oh, of course. Please take your time, General. He gave me a deep look, then turned and left with a flick of his sleeve. The maid asked curiously, Why does the general seem a bit unhappy? Probably because he still hasn't been reinstated to his official position, so he remains frustrated. I sighed. It'll be better in a few more days. The next day while taking a walk, I ran into Jiyu Yenji again. Coming face to face, I stepped forward to greet him. Jiyu Yenji coughed a couple of times and deliberately chatted with me for a while, coughing several more times during our conversation. The general seems to be ill, the maid said sympathetically. Then I'll bring him some cooling soup tomorrow, I sighed. The next day at noon, I brought another pot of soup to Jiyu Yenji. He seemed to be in a good mood. This soup is quite good. Keep it coming tomorrow. I stared at him in astonishment, then couldn't resist having a bowl myself. There was nothing particularly special about it. When I returned, the maid in my room was utterly amazed. The general has never accepted soup from anyone before. Impossible. Didn't Lu Yao and the others send some before? The maid covered her mouth with a mysterious smile, pulling me to hide outside the main courtyard to watch the commotion. Sure enough, we saw Lu Yao carrying a food box heading toward the main courtyard, but she was turned away before even stepping through the gate. Perhaps the general has matters to attend to today and doesn't wish to be disturbed, I whispered. After being driven away, Lu Yao, seething with anger, gathered a group to cause trouble for me. With feigned affection, they called me sister and slipped something into my teacup. Of course, I didn't drink it and sent them all away, but I never expected to still fall into their trap. The next day, my face broke out in red rashes. Upon investigation, I discovered they had sprinkled some kind of powder on my pillow, intending to ruin my appearance. I was so angry that I grabbed my pillow and went to confront them. Pressing their faces against my pillow and rubbing it hard. You never learn from your mistakes. If you want to ruin my face, then let's all ruin ours together. No one gets away with it. The courtyard was filled with cries and wails. Just like last time, they wept with disheveled hair, demanding that the general take action on their behalf. After the fight, I felt much better. But Jiyu Yenji had been alerted by the commotion. It was a repeat of the previous scene. I didn't dare go near Jiyu Yenji, thinking to myself, go ahead and whip me if you must. Even if you drive me out, I'm not afraid. Anyway, I have to vent this anger. Jiyu Yenji said coldly, follow the rules. Each of them gets 60 lashes and is expelled from the mansion. He turned and left, and the guards came forward to take Lu Yao and the others away, leaving only me behind. I was stunned, and not just me. Lu Yao and the others were equally shocked. General, Why didn't you punish Shenrong? The general is biased. General. We know we were wrong. Jiyu Yenji didn't even turn his head, leaving Lu Yao and the others crying where they stood. My maid said excitedly, the general is truly different toward you. In the afternoon, a doctor came, examined my face, and left some ointment with instructions on how to use it. Lu Yao and the others were indeed driven out. After they left, my life became much more comfortable, no noise, no disturbances, and even the food improved. The fabric for my clothes increased as well. The maid said with a smile, you don't go out, so you wouldn't know, but everyone outside is saying the general is captivated by you. For your sake, he drove out all the women in the courtyard and favors you alone, favoring me alone. If it weren't for my thick skin, he would have kicked me out days ago. When Jiyu Yenji returned in the evening, he handed me an invitation. Lady Wang is hosting a flower viewing banquet, and your sister will be there too. Should I go? Is it appropriate for someone like me to attend? Although I am no longer a courtesan, I am still the daughter of a disgraced official, hardly presentable in polite society. To my utter surprise, Jiyu Yenji accompanied me to Lady Wang's flower viewing banquet. As soon as we arrived, everyone looked at me with curiosity. Jiyu Yenji whispered to me, are you scared? I had seen all the ladies and young misses attending the banquet before when I went out with my mother, but times have changed. And my position has become awkward. If the general isn't afraid, why should I be? I said with a smile. He snorted coldly and muttered, they should be the ones afraid of me. I burst out laughing, thinking it was true after all. Jiyu Yenji was now notorious, someone everyone feared. Then the general and I must be the kind of people who make each other awkward whenever we meet. Jiyu Yenji suppressed a laugh, turned, and walked away. I watched him leave, and when I turned back, I saw my sister's cold gaze. Noticing that I had seen her, she quickly put on a smile and approached me. I never expected that not only did Jiyu Yenji dismiss his entire harem for you, but he also brought you to the flower viewing banquet. It seems my worries were unnecessary. I smiled and said, what are you worried about, sister? Her expression turned cold for a moment before she forced a smile. But don't get too carried away. Jiyu Yenji is moody and unpredictable. He may treat you well now, but who knows if he'll turn on you tomorrow. Oh, thank you for the reminder, sister. I tilted my head and looked at her. But how do you know General Jiyu is moody and unpredictable? I remember, you didn't know him before. My sister's face stiffened, and she let out an awkward laugh. It's common knowledge in the capital. Everyone knows. That rumor is untrue, I said with a smile. The general is very gentle. My sister could no longer maintain her gentle expression, flicking her sleeve. She said, no matter how gentle he is, you're still just a concubine. If you have the ability, make him marry you. What are you so proud of? She turned and left in a huff, watching her angry retreating figure. I was in an excellent mood. Smiling, I went to greet the wives of various families. Though they wanted to avoid me, they were constrained by propriety, so their attitudes remained lukewarm. I don't care. I just stare at Lady Yang and speak. Lady Yang is the wife of Commander Yang of the Imperial Guards. Due to the special nature of his position, Lady Yang rarely socializes in the circle of noble women. Additionally, both Commander Yang and his wife come from humble backgrounds, and their lack of social interaction also implies they are being excluded. My goal today is clear. Because in the upcoming spring hunt, all the security arrangements are handled by Commander Yang. In my previous life, after the incident occurred, only the Emperor, the third prince, and Commander Yang were present at the scene, and Commander Yang did not say a single word in support of the third prince. This is why, in his panic, the third prince spoke recklessly and dragged Jiyu Yenji down with him. This time, I intentionally tried to build a good relationship with Lady Yang. By using my memories and understanding of her from my past life to cater to her preferences, within half an hour, she had already set aside our status differences and affectionately called me little sister. On the way back, I took the initiative to tell Jiyu Yenji about what happened at the banquet. Lady Yang said she's going to the spring hunt on the 22nd of the first month. Her husband has been very busy lately, Jiyu Yenji said indifferently. There's the imperial examination this year. The emperor moved it up by half a month. The emperor did not summon him to accompany, and Jiyu Yenji had no intention of going either. After all, even if he had been stripped of his official position, He had plenty of ways to go if he wanted to. Will the general go? I asked with feigned anticipation. I heard there are golden pheasants in Yulon Mountain. I'd really like to see them. Jiu Yenji looked at me with some surprise. Because my words were both abrupt and inappropriate, something I wouldn't normally say, he found it strange. I pretended to be clueless and looked at him expectantly. Then I'll have someone bring you a golden pheasant, Jiu Yenji said. Sigh, it seems he still doesn't want to go. Now I can only pin my hopes on Lady Yang. Fortunately, Lady Yang did not disappoint me. A few days later, the transfer order was delivered to the general's residence. Commander Yang had invited Jiu Yenji to assist with the security arrangements for the spring hunt. When the transfer order arrived, I was in Jiu Yenji's study, holding the letter. He looked at me quietly. Was your interaction with Lady Yang all for the purpose of sending me to the spring hunt? I nodded. I want the general to personally hunt a golden pheasant for me. Jiu Yenji stared at me fixedly, remaining silent for a long time. I breathed a sigh of relief. With Jiu Yenji here, the events of the previous life would certainly not happen again. In the blink of an eye, the spring hunt arrived. Jiu Yenji went to the hunting grounds a day early. He didn't say goodbye to me before leaving, and I didn't mind waiting in the estate for news from him. I clearly remember that in my previous life, the incident happened on the second day of the spring hunt. After the incident, His Majesty immediately returned to the capital. I waited quietly for 3 days, but no news came back. I breathed a sigh of relief and waited for half a month until Jiu Yenji finally returned. Holding a golden pheasant in his hand, I lifted my skirt and ran toward him. The general has returned. He stopped and laughed, slightly spreading his arms. I rushed over and pointed at the pheasant in his hand. General, you're amazing. You actually caught a pheasant. He withdrew his hand, and his smile faded. Do you really like this chicken that much? I do. It's lovely, beautiful. I called out to Steward Liu. Quick, we're having chicken tonight. Jiu Yenji looked at me with a strange expression. I was so happy that I didn't even notice Jiu Yenji's expression. I had changed the course of events. If things went smoothly, Jiu Yenji should soon be reinstated to his official position. Once I resolved the remaining matter, I could retire with my mission accomplished. Sure enough, 3 days later, Jiu Yenji was reinstated to his official position, and the emperor treated him as favorably as ever. On his first day back from the office, I personally prepared several dishes and waited for him. He looked at me and said, "You seem even happier than I am." Of course, my general has been reinstated. It's a joyous occasion for everyone in the world, I replied with a smile, looking at him. Jiu Yenji took a sip of wine, his cheeks slightly flushed. By the end of February, Jiu Yenji began to busy himself with the spring imperial examinations. By mid-March, when the exams commenced, the entire capital seemed to fall into a hush. Miss, today I saw your sister booking a banquet at the Spring Breeze Pavilion for the end of the month. It seems Mr. Wen is quite confident about passing the imperial examination with high honors, the maid said. I sipped my tea, laughing inwardly. That good-for-nothing Wen Qinghe couldn't even pass as a regular, Jinsha, successful candidate, let alone become a Tanhu third top scorer. As for why he became the Tanhu in my previous life, it was because after I became Master Lu's student, he predicted dozens of potential exam questions. I wrote the answers, Master Lu revised them, and then we made Wen Qinghe memorize every single one. The remarkable coincidence was that Master Lu's predictions turned out to be accurate, which was how Wen Qinghe ended up ranking as the Tanhu. In this life, without me and Mr. Lu, he would never have passed the imperial examination. Only my sister truly believed that Wen Qinghe was both talented and handsome, thinking I was just lucky to have married him in my previous life. At the end of the month, when the imperial examination results were announced, as I expected, Wen Qinghe failed to make the list. He didn't care, because he knew his own limitations. But my sister couldn't bear it. She had long prepared herself to become the wife of a top scholar and a future chief minister. But now her pipe dream was shattered. She refused to accept it and actually beat the drum to appeal for justice, accusing the imperial examination of being rigged. The matter caused a huge uproar, and the court thoroughly investigated it. Of course, in the end, no issues were found, and both my sister and Wen Qinghe were imprisoned in the Dali Temple. A day later, My sister sent someone with a message. She wanted to see me. It was my first time entering the prison cells of the Dali temple. My sister sat on the ground with disheveled hair, her face clearly bruised, while Wen Qinghe crouched in the corner, his face and arms covered in scratches. It seems I missed a marital battle. Shunrong, my sister saw me and rushed over furiously. If not for the fence between us, I think she would have killed me on the spot. I ask you, why is it different? I frowned. What's different? Don't play dumb with me. I noticed at the last flower viewing banquet that you were getting close to Lady Yang. Just like me, you've been reborn. My sister reached out as if to strike me. Why didn't Wen Qinghe pass the imperial examination with high honors? In our previous life, he was the third-ranked scholar. You must have tampered with something, didn't you? Looking at her, I suddenly remembered when I was 5 years old. Playing with her in our grandmother's room, she broke our grandmother's vase, and afraid of being scolded, she said I was the one who broke it. When grandmother slapped my palm, she also slapped me across the face, saying I was mischievous and unruly, bringing shame to the eldest branch of the family. She has always been like this, never changing. All the good things are hers, and whenever there's trouble, she immediately pushes it onto others. I sneered. Listen to yourself. What are you saying? Do you really think I could manipulate the imperial examinations? Then why? She screamed. You want to know why? Then I'll tell you. I was born with a destiny of wealth and nobility. No matter who I marry, that man will soar to great heights and achieve meteoric success. I whispered. So, in our previous life, Wen Qinghe succeeded in the imperial examinations because he married me. I helped him pass the exams with top honors. I assisted his rise to prominence. He was the lucky one to have met me, not the other way around. It wasn't my good fortune to marry the chief minister. This lifetime, since you married him, of course he no longer has that kind of luck. My sister glared at me fiercely. Suddenly, Wen Qinghe rushed out from the corner, gripping the bars and staring at me unblinkingly. Have we met before? Why do you feel so familiar to me? I gave Wen Qinghe a deep look, then turned and walked away. My sister and Wen Qinghe called after me from behind, but soon they started arguing with each other again, each blaming the other. A few days later, the punishment for my sister and Wen Qinghe was decided. Someone had intervened on their behalf. My sister was sentenced to 30 strokes with the court rod, while Wen Qinghe was banned from taking imperial examinations for life. After being banned from the exams, Wen Qinghe completely dropped all pretense. He spent his days drinking and carousing with his disreputable friends outside. Whenever he returned home and saw his sister, he would fly into a rage. Regardless of her serious injuries, he would take out his frustrations on her with kicks and punches. That night, I had a dream. In the dream, I returned to the Shun residence. My father came back from his official duties, and the three of us siblings gathered around him to chat, while our mother sat to the side, smiling as she watched us. When I opened my eyes again, my face was already streaked with tears. Jiyu Yenji was very busy. I hadn't seen him for several consecutive days. On this day, the maid returned and told me that Wen Qinghe had been arrested and sent to prison, imprisoned again. I was taken aback. For what reason? The maid replied, he caused a disturbance at Drunken Spring Pavilion while intoxicated and accidentally killed a courtesan. I sighed. In the previous life, Wen Qinghe was at the peak of his success at this time, admired by all as a talented scholar and celebrity. In this life, he has completely sunk into the mire, likely with no chance of ever rising again. 2 more days passed, and Jiyu Yenji suddenly returned from the yamen early. As soon as he came back, he called me to his study. When I pushed open the study door, I was surprised to see my sister there as well. It turned out that the one who had protected them was Jiyu Yenji. When my sister saw me, tears instantly streamed down her face, looking utterly pitiful. Ronga, your brother-in-law. I have nowhere else to go. I had no choice but to come to you and the general. As she spoke, she knelt down with a thud in front of me, weeping as if her heart would break. Rong, in this world, you are the only family I have left. My sister was crying and pleading, of course not really begging me, but putting on a show for Jiyu Yenji. In her previous life, she had spent 6 years in the Jiyu residence, so she should have known that Jiyu Yenji responds better to softness than to force. Perhaps she also knew that Jiyu Yenji couldn't resist a woman's tears. I knew this because I had used this trick on Jiu Yenji several times before, and it had worked every time. I think if a great beauty like my sister cries, it must be even more effective. Sure enough, Jiu Yenji frowned with heartache and looked at me. Shenrong. Whether to keep her or not is your decision, asking me hypocritically if you didn't want to keep her. Why did you bring her back? This is the general's home, so of course it's up to the general to decide, I muttered sullenly, from a position where Jiu Yenji couldn't see. My sister smiled triumphantly and whispered to me, I bet he'll let me stay, little sister. He was once my husband too. Today, when he saw me at the door, he brought me back with him. I frowned, flicked my sleeve, and turned to leave. Shenrong, Jiu Yenji called out to me. I paused and said, I don't want her to stay. If you wish to keep her, General, then do as you please. As soon as I finished speaking, I heard Jiu Yenji say, Liu Yu, please escort her out. I was taken aback, turning around to look at Jiu Yenji in surprise. Was he really just asking for my opinion? My sister was clearly shocked too, calling out General, but Jiu Yenji completely ignored her. It's you, my sister glared at me. Her eyes filled with malice. You've always been jealous of me since we were young, unable to bear seeing me do well, and it's still the same now, you wretched woman. She stepped forward, raising her hand to strike me, but before I could even push her away, she was already sent flying like a kite with its string cut. Jiu Yenji looked at his sister with a dark expression and scolded, Guards, throw her out. No, General, you can't do this to me. In our past life, you and I were husband and wife. She married Wen Qinghe. She never liked you, General, the sister screamed. Jiu Yenji watched as his sister was dragged away, frowning slightly. He said you married Wen Qinghe. I shook my head. How could that be? She's gone mad, talking nonsense. Jiu Yenji was still not very happy. I quickly ran away. However, when Jiu Yenji's unreasonable attitude wasn't directed at me, it felt really good. Having averted the first crisis, I began to ponder Jiu Yenji's second and most difficult challenge to overcome, his sister and nephew. In his previous life, it was because of Consort Zhuang and the third prince that he had been perpetually frustrated and unable to achieve his ambitions, and in the end, he was dragged by the third prince onto the path of rebellion, meeting a tragic death. It would be very difficult for Jiu Yenji to abandon his sister and nephew. Jiu Yenji had lost his mother at a young age and was raised by his sister. To him, his sister's kindness was greater than heaven. However, neither the third prince nor Consort Zhuang were the main figures in this matter. I was waiting for that person to appear. Before this, I need to make some preparations for the future. So I went to find Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu was originally my father's advisor in my previous life. After I found him, I begged to become his disciple. In this life, I did not become his disciple, nor did I approach him using the identity of the second Miss Shen. Now, I didn't want to hide it from him. When the gentleman saw me take off my hat, he smiled and said, When second Miss came, I recognized you right away. How could there be such a handsome man in this world? I was deeply embarrassed, recalling what Jiu Yenji had said that day. So, my cross-dressing as a man was just me fooling myself. Mr. Liu burst into laughter. Sir, I said with a smile, I want to go into business. Mr. Liu was both surprised and delighted, eagerly asking me what kind of business I wanted to do. Silk and tea, I whispered. I also want to engage in maritime trade and have already identified a few ships, but at the moment, I have no one to manage it, and it's not appropriate for me to step forward. So, Mr. Liu agreed without hesitation, saying he was willing to step in on my behalf. In my previous life, I clearly remembered that the emperor would open maritime trade in the middle of the year. It didn't last long, as coastal piracy became rampant, leading to the closure of maritime trade once again, but this 1 year was enough. In my past life, the merchants who caught this wave made a fortune, and I, as well as Jiu Yenji in the future, need money. But, do you have money? I'll borrow from the general, I said with a smile. Mr. Liu pointed at me. Second Miss, your courage grows ever greater. You actually dare to borrow money from the general. That evening, I made several kinds of pastries and waited for Jiu Yenji, but he didn't return until midnight. I dozed off in the living room. In the early hours of the morning, someone gently tapped my shoulder and asked, Why didn't you go back to your room to sleep? The general is back. I handed him all the pastries from the table. Are you hungry? Have some before you go to bed, General. Jiu Yenji had no choice but to take the 3 or 4 boxes of pastries. You waited until midnight just to give me these. He sat down with an expression that said he had already seen right through me, waiting for me to continue. I poured him some tea and handed him a piece of pastry. General, lend me some money. Jiu Yenji laughed. I knew you weren't being this nice for no reason. I am being nice. I haven't seen you in days. And I'm especially happy to see you tonight, smooth talker. He asked, how much do you need? I raised one finger. 10,000 taels. For 1 year. Next year, I'll repay you 100,000 taels. Jiu Yenji glanced at me sideways. What kind of business are you getting into? I'll have someone check it out for you. Afraid he might not lend me the money, I walked behind him, steeled my heart, and started massaging his shoulders. With Mr. Liu, in maritime trade. I've already found the ship, just waiting to pay. I leaned down to look at him. General, everything is ready except for the east wind you need to provide. Jiu Yenji glanced at me sideways, his eyes flickering and the tips of his ears quickly turning red. He stood up to avoid me and walked out, saying as he went, Liu Yu, get 10,000 taels for the second mission. My eyes lit up. General, are you lending it to me? He took a step back. As if afraid I would pounce on him like a hungry tiger. I'll lend it to you, if it's not enough. Just ask Liu Yu again. He seemed somewhat embarrassed, and I couldn't help but laugh. Thank you, General, you are the best person in the world, and I will definitely repay you well. Jiu Yenji quickly disappeared into the courtyard. Liu Yu smiled and handed me a 10,000 tael silver note, whispering, only you can speak to the general like that without making him angry. I smiled to myself. Thinking Jiu Yenji was quite interesting, everything went smoothly, and Mr. Liu and I became busy. Sometimes, I still disguised myself as a man to accompany Mr. Liu on business negotiations. Everything was ready, and in mid-June, His Majesty indeed issued the order to lift the maritime ban. We had long been prepared, hiring the best crew and purchasing ships at the lowest prices, making us the first to set sail. 2 months later, when the ship returned, we had tripled our profits. I carried a pile of imported goods to find Jiu Yenji. I've specially saved these imported goods for you, General. I laid them out one by one on his desk. You can use them yourself or give them as gifts. He looked at me and said, you've gotten so tanned. Did you personally go out on the ships? I touched my face, then found a mirror to examine myself carefully. I had indeed gotten much tanner. It's fine. I'm still beautiful even when I'm tanned, right? Jiu Yenji toyed with the snuff bottle I brought, letting out a soft hum from his nose. I leaned in closer and said with a smile, are you free tonight, General? I'd like to treat you to a meal. Jiu Yenji raised an eyebrow, made some money and feeling generous now. Treating you to a meal doesn't require generosity. Whenever you want to eat, I'll treat you anytime. A faint smile curled at the corner of Jiu Yenji's lips. I had reserved several tables at the restaurant. As soon as Jiu Yenji arrived, Mr. Liu and the staff all stood up. I introduced him to everyone, and one of the cooks, an auntie, quietly asked me, General Jiu, isn't he your man? I quickly covered the auntie's mouth. Don't say such nonsense. The general is not my man. The auntie wasn't convinced. Boss, such a handsome man like the general, are you telling me you don't fancy him? I don't look down on him. It's him who doesn't fancy me. I shushed her. Hurry up and eat. Stop talking. The aunt gave me a pitiful look. Madam, then used some feminine wiles to seduce the general. After finally getting the aunt to drop the subject, I took a sip of tea to calm my nerves. When I turned around, I realized that Jiu Yenji had already taken a seat beside me at some point. He sat upright and proper, drinking his tea, his face revealing nothing, but the tips of his ears were red. When did the general arrive? I asked, my lips twitching slightly. He glanced at me, suppressing a smile. It's been a long time. I covered my face, wishing I could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Behind me, someone burst out laughing. The next day, I quietly packed my bags and left. It was better to avoid the situation for a while. It was just too awkward. I didn't return until after the new year, selling all the ships before the maritime ban took effect. Mr. Liu and I went back to the capital. Before returning to the general's residence, I withdrew the money and went to find Jiu Yenji. General, I've come to repay the debt. He looked up from the piles of documents and glanced at me, smiling. I placed the wooden box containing the banknotes in front of him. The 10,000 taels you lent me, along with the interest I owe you, are all here. He flipped through it. 10,000 taels multiplied by 10. General, no need to be polite. There will be many places where money is needed in the future. Moreover, I sat down in front of him. I have many business dealings that will rely on your support. Consider this money as an investment in your influence, your share of the profits. If he were to assist the third prince in the struggle for the throne in the future, 100,000 taels would be far from enough. Then you must make more use of my influence, otherwise you'll be at a loss. Gu Yenji laughed. He rarely smiled. And I just realized how handsome he looks when he does. I was momentarily stunned, staring blankly. Gu Yenji coughed lightly, his gaze falling on my clothes. I looked down and only then noticed 2 holes torn in my sleeve. I was utterly embarrassed. He raised an eyebrow. The palace has bestowed many bolts of women's fabric. I'll give them all to you. I was surprised. Is the general getting married? Why would the palace suddenly grant you women's fabric? Gu Yenji's face darkened. And he ignored me. When I returned to my room, I was stunned. I thought there would only be a little fabric, but I never expected it to cover the entire table, 20 or 30 bolts in total. The maid smiled and said, "While you were away, the general brought these back. Sometimes he brought 1 bolt, sometimes 2. The general brought them himself." The maid nodded. It was only later that I found out that these fabrics were not given to him by the palace at all. Rather, he had taken them proactively from the Imperial Household Department. Whenever the latest materials arrived from Jiangnan, he would go and take some for himself. Nowadays, the staff at the Imperial Household Department avoid him whenever they see him, and even the Imperial consorts in the rear palace have started talking about Gu Yenji, because he always picks the best ones to take. Without engaging in maritime trade, Mr. Liu and I planned to go into the tea and silk business. So we kept looking at shops. Before the Dragon Boat Festival, we traveled out of town again, and by the time we returned, the festival had already passed. "Miss Shin, you're back," Manager Liu said with a smile. "We thought you would return on the day of the Dragon Boat Festival. The general waited for you to have dinner and stayed up until midnight." I was taken aback, wiping the sweat from my forehead. "Waiting for me," Manager Liu confirmed with a nod. "My apologies for the oversight. Is the general at home?" "Yes, he is." I went back to my room to change clothes and immediately went to find Gu Yenji with the gifts. Pushing open the door to his study, I smiled and said, "General, I've brought you." The rest of my words were left unfinished, because I realized the person in the study wasn't him, it was Dai Sichu. My heart skipped a beat. The person I had been waiting for had finally appeared. Dai Sichu was Gu Yenji's childhood friend and also the former lover of Consort Zhuang before she entered the palace. Later, when Consort Zhuang was selected to enter the palace, their relationship came to an end. Afterwards, Dai Sichu traveled alone throughout the land, writing many travelogues and gaining great prestige among the common people. He had been away for many years when one day he suddenly returned to the capital. Upon his return, he frequently visited Gu Yenji and later became acquainted with the third prince. It was because of him that the third prince started the rebellion. Later, when the rebellion failed, Dai Sichu kept muttering Consort Zhuang's name on his deathbed, saying some nonsense about not being able to be together in life. When I heard it, I found it utterly ironic. The third prince's rebellion implicated Gu Yenji, and so many innocent lives were lost, all because the instigator's motive was merely for love. Merely to see the woman he loved one more time in his lifetime. Dai Sichu was also taken aback when he saw me. "So you are the second Miss Shin?" I nodded. Dai Sichu should be 22 this year, the same age as Gu Yenji and 2 years younger than Consort Zhuang, because he often traveled outdoors. His skin was somewhat tanned, but his looks and demeanor were not diminished in the slightest. No wonder in my previous life, some people jokingly called Dai Sichu a devoted and handsome man. "Please have a seat." Dai Sichu was very enthusiastic. "I've heard that Miss Shin II runs a large business and has the ability to turn stone into gold with her hands. I've always been curious about what kind of woman could possess such capabilities. Seeing you today has truly broadened my horizons." I smiled. "You flatter me, Mr. Dai." Dai Sichu was surprised. "You know me, I nodded. Mr. Dai is quite famous. I've also had the pleasure of reading the travelogues you've written. Daisichu became even more enthusiastic, actually rising to sit beside me, eagerly discussing business. My heart stirred, and I said with a smile, Sir, having traveled far and wide with such broad experience, you would have a greater advantage in business than I. Daisitu's eyes lit up. I've indeed had this thought. Over the years, the more I've traveled and seen, the more I feel that in this life, one must accomplish something, leave something behind for future generations, otherwise, coming and going like a gust of wind, passing like smoke and clouds without a trace, that would be a regret. I think the same way, even if we accumulate wealth, if our country faces difficulties in the future, contributing our modest strength would mean we didn't live in vain. It was as if he had met a kindred spirit. We immediately hit it off, his eyes filled with appreciation. Actually, now that Jiyu Yenji has returned to the court and the third prince is being disciplined better than in the previous life, Daisichu's influence is minimal, but just in case, I still need to keep an eye on him, so, I'll give him something to do. When people are busy and have new pursuits, love and romance are no longer the only things in life. He probably won't incite the third prince to rebel again. We were chatting happily when Jiyu Yenji returned. You two know each other, Yenji. Daisichu said cheerfully, you actually have such a delightful person as the second young lady hidden away at home. It feels like we've met far too late. Jiyu Yenji gave me a surprised look. Mr. Dai is witty, humorous, and knowledgeable. It would be my fortune to do business with him. Today, my treat. Let's dine at Yefeng Tower, Daisichu said with a smile. Second miss, you must honor us with your presence. Of course, I agreed. Daisichu thought of something again. Yenji, if you have something to do, go ahead and attend to it. I'll have a meal with the second miss, and we can talk when you're free. Jiyu Yenji frowned, glanced at me, and said sullenly, you're going to have a meal with him. I nodded. He seemed a bit displeased. As I got up to leave, he called out to me again. What's that in your hand? Oh, a gift for the general, a pendant to be worn on the belt. I handed it to him, and he took it with effortless grace. Then, glancing at Daisichu's empty hands, the corners of his lips curled into a smug smile. I whispered an apology to him. I didn't make it back on the day of the Dragon Boat Festival. General, I'm truly sorry for keeping you waiting. He stiffened his expression and said urgently, who said I was waiting for you? I wasn't. I have things to do. I'm heading out now. As he spoke, he turned back to look at Daisichu. I've arranged a place for you to stay. You're not allowed to live here with me, Daisichu muttered. I always stayed at your place when I came back before. Why won't you let me stay now? I chatted with Daisichu all afternoon, made some plans, and went to Yefeng restaurant for dinner in the evening. Just as we sat down, Jiyu Yenji arrived. I noticed that the pendant I had given him at noon was now hanging at his waist, matching well with his newly changed clothes. Daisichu was very surprised. Didn't you have to go on a business trip? Haven't you left yet? I'm not going out for now. Jiyu Yenji stroked the pendant at his waist as he sat down beside me, his gaze falling on the sugar-fried chestnuts by my hand. I smiled and said, Mr. Dai bought them for me. Would you like some? General, he frowned. You like chestnuts? I nodded. To my surprise, he silently took the paper bag and began peeling and eating the chestnuts unhurriedly. In the blink of an eye, he had finished the entire bag. I was stunned. But he said nonchalantly, they're finished. I'll buy you another bag later. Oh, I could only nod. The esteemed Jiyu Yenji competing with me for chestnuts. No one would believe it if word got out. When did you start liking chestnuts? Daisichu asked puzzledly. You wouldn't even eat them when you were a child, saying they were too much trouble. Jiyu Yenji glanced at him. People change. Daisichu looked at him with a strange expression. After the meal, Jiyu Yenji took me to buy 10 bags of chestnuts. After that day, for some reason, Jiyu Yenji, who was usually very busy, suddenly found himself with a lot of free time. Whenever Daisichu came to the house, he would always return. I didn't have the mind to pay attention to him either, as I was constantly occupied with business in the capital. Previously, we hadn't opened any shops in the capital, but now we've opened 2 in a row. One is a medicine shop, and the other is a tea house. The medicine was sourced through Daisichu's connections, which I didn't have. As for the tea, opening a shopfront was just for show. Our main business was supplying noble families. When things got busy, we were constantly on our feet. Dai Sichu was highly capable, especially skilled in dealing with people. His silver tongue could talk his way through anything, and I truly admired that about him. Tea alone isn't enough. Are you suggesting we should also add silk? And have you secured connections with all the noble families? I asked. What's so difficult about that? Dai Sichu said with a laugh. If the second young lady wants to become a royal merchant, I can make that happen too. You are truly a man of great talent, I said, cupping my hands in salute. Mr. Liu also expressed his admiration, saying, everyone in the world admires Mr. Dai, and I used to think it was unwarranted. Now I see that I was blind. I discussed with Dai Sichu and Mr. Liu about making a trip to Jiangnan in the middle of the year to finalize agreements with the silk suppliers. After returning to the general's residence, I informed Jiyu Yenji about my upcoming trip to Jiangnan. His brows furrowed tightly. Why do you have to go? Why can't he and Mr. Liu handle it themselves? I was busy calculating accounts when I stopped and looked at Jiyu Yenji. I might as well learn from Mr. Dai as well. His business skills are superior to mine. Jiyu Yenji sat across from me, holding a book with a stern face, lost in thought, and didn't speak for a long time. Before heading to Jiangnan, a major event occurred. Consort Zhuang was released from the cold palace. I observed Dai Sichu's reaction. He remained much the same as usual. However, Consort Zhuang was anything but quiet, causing trouble as soon as she left the cold palace. Sometimes I think it's understandable. Back then, the siblings only had each other to rely on. If Consort Zhuang hadn't been tough and sharp-tongued, they probably wouldn't have survived. Invite me into the palace. I looked at Steward Liu, feeling utterly baffled. Does Her Highness have some instructions for me? Steward Liu only gave a partial explanation. It's probably about the general's marriage. Jiyu Yenji was away from the capital on official business, and I had reason to suspect that Consort Zhuang had specifically chosen this opportunity to summon me into the palace. I couldn't refuse, so I tidied up and prepared to enter the palace. Before entering the palace, Dai Sichu suddenly came to see me, hesitating and unable to speak, but in the end, he just flicked his sleeve and left. This was my second time seeing Consort Zhuang. The first time was in my previous life. After when Qinghe was promoted to chief minister, I saw her at the Empress's banquet. That banquet left a deep impression on me because she splashed wine in Consort Liang's face and was reprimanded by the emperor. I was immediately surprised. Consort Zhuang had experienced ups and downs in the imperial harem for over a decade and had even been sent to the cold palace twice. Why could she still be so easily provoked into anger? My impression of Consort Zhuang back then came entirely from her personality. I hadn't paid much attention to her beauty, but seeing her today, I was struck by her stunning appearance. No wonder she, who came from a humble background and could barely read, had once been the most favored consort in the entire harem. Even I was captivated by that face. Indeed, with a handsome brother like Jiyu Yenji, how could the sister be any less impressive? Consort Zhuang spoke very directly and quickly. I am seeking a wife of equal status for Yenji. It is inappropriate for you, with no name or position, to live in his house. Here's the deal. I'll give you 3 days to move out of the general's residence. Before Yenji gets married, you are not allowed to have any contact with him, lest you ruin his marriage. If you agree, I will still show you some respect. If you don't, I have plenty of ways to deal with you. She set down her teacup with a sharp click and looked at me with piercing eyes. If you like him and can't let go, I am not without a path for you. Wait 3 to 5 years until his legitimate son is born and grown up. By then, I will make the decision to elevate you to be his concubine. What do you think? Say something. Don't just stay silent like a mute. Consort Zhuang frowned. What could I say? I could only agree. This humble woman dares not disobey your highness's decree. However, before leaving the general's residence, I must wait for the general to return and inform him properly. I stood up and replied. She waved her hand. You go your own way. He won't miss you. I know my brother best. He's been cold since childhood, never had much affection for anyone. Don't hold on to any inappropriate thoughts about him either. The gap in your status is too great. He won't like you. I still answered in agreement. After saying all this, Consort Zhuang had someone escort me away. Returning to the general's residence, I found that Dai Sichu was still there. eagerly asking me what I had discussed with Consort Zhuang. I told him everything Consort Zhuang had said. He gave a smile uglier than crying. She hasn't changed at all, still so straightforward. I stopped and looked at him. He scratched his head, somewhat awkward. I've liked her since we were kids, thinking she was beautiful and capable. When we grew older, I dreamed of marrying her. Dai Sichu sighed. But fate played a cruel trick. Someone, trying to curry favor with the emperor, offered her 5,000 taels to send her into the palace. Without a second thought, she gave all 5,000 taels to Yanji and left with them that very day. For so many years, I've always wanted to say goodbye to her. Every time in my dreams, I chase after her calling sister, asking her why she didn't bid me farewell when she left. All these years, has she ever thought of me even once? The affection from his youth became his obsession, and I let out a soft sigh as well. I think for her, love and affection were not as important as a steamed bun to fill the stomach. You've never had to worry about food and clothing since you were young, but she, at such a tender age, had to take care of two people's bellies. She simply had no leisure to experience emotions. Dai Sichu looked up at the sky, and after a long while, he wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes and said with melancholy, "You're right, all these years, I've been too stubborn. What would it matter if I saw her, not to mention whether she still remembers me? Even if she does, what would it change? There are many people in her life she needs to consider, but I am certainly not one of them." I handed him a handkerchief, but he waved it away. Talking about it has lightened my heart a lot. But this is a secret. You mustn't tell anyone, not even Jiyu Yenji. I shushed him. Don't worry, I won't tell a soul. Dai Sichu smiled and patted my head. You're such a clever little imp. If Yenji doesn't like you, there's something wrong with his eyes. I also think there's something wrong with both the siblings' eyes. We laughed together. Just as we were laughing, Jiyu Yenji returned. He stood at the door, looking at us with an unhappy expression. Aren't you supposed to go to Jiangnan? Why haven't you left yet? Jiyu Yenji pushed Dai Sichu aside and stood between us. I'm waiting to leave with Rongrong, Dai Sichu said. Otherwise, if I leave, Rongrong will be lonely all by herself. She has no family, and no one would care whether she's warm or cold. Jiyu Yenji's expression grew even darker. She's staying at my place, and I'll naturally take care of her. Dai Sichu retorted. Have you taken care of her? Since when do you know how to care about others? You never learned how to, even as a child. Jiyu Yenji wanted to say something. His lips twitched several times, but he couldn't manage to refute because what Dai Sichu said was true. You can leave now. Jiyu Yenji began to see the guest out. I felt the atmosphere was off and decided to step away for a bit. Well, I'll go cook. I'll help you. Dai Sichu also slipped away. I made 4 dishes. When the food was on the table, Jiyu Yenji's face turned even darker. Why is everything spicy? Jiyu Yenji had been injured before, and the doctor had advised him not to eat spicy food. But Dai Sichu had a strong preference for bold flavors. These are all my favorites, Dai Sichu said. Happily digging in, Jiyu Yenji hadn't touched a single bite. I cautiously suggested, shall I go make a bowl of noodles for the general? The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. That would be acceptable. I had no choice but to go cook noodles for him. Just as I was busy, he appeared at the kitchen door and asked, "Did Consort Zhuang summon you to the palace today?" "Yes, and I was just about to discuss this with you." I repeated Consort Zhuang's words to him. His brows furrowed tightly as he asked, "So, you're planning to move out, The 2-year agreement I made with the general is almost up, so it's a good time to move out. Once things settle down a bit, I plan to head to the northwest to find my parents." "I never thanked you," I whispered. "I know you've been taking care of my parents." He remained silent. From the moment I was reborn until now, I never asked about my parents' and eldest brother's situation. Because I knew they were being cared for by Jiyu Yenji. They weren't in any life-threatening danger, and hadn't even suffered much hardship. In my previous life,